Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Apprenticeship Diversity and Social Mobility Forum. Today's topic is measuring youth employment activity, turning evidence into employer practice, and celebrating Youth Employment Week. This webinar comes at the end of the Youth Employment Week and will be a moment to celebrate some of the great activity across the week, but also focus on the support and information available to employers to help improve their youth employment inclusion and diversity work. We have got a stellar panel of individuals today, real sort of sector leaders within their sector, and it's really fabulous that they can join us this morning. And thank you very much to all the individuals that have also registered to attend. I hope you find it insightful. Please use the question and answer box and button for any questions that you may have. We will be answering those as the sessions go along, and we do have a panel session towards the end of the webinar as well for you guys to ask any questions. Please let's make it interactive. Without your impact and your input, it's going to be a pretty sort of dull session, really. But let's start off. If I can bring to the stage Laura Jane Rawlings and Chiara. So just really give a bit of an intro. So Laura Jane Rawlings, MBE, is the CEO of Youth Employment UK. Laura Jane is a passionate campaigner for youth employment and rights for all young people to access employment and have their voices heard on the issues that affect them. Laura Jane is a CEO and board member and with more than 15 years experience of leading both profit and non-profit organisations. With personal experience of social inequality and poverty, Laura Jane founded Youth Employment UK in 2012. Laura Jane was also recognised in King's Honours Awards and awarded an MBE, and also very, very recently became the Deputy Lieutenant of Northamptonshire. And she's also joined by Chiara, who's a Youth Voice Ambassador. So Laura, can I hand across to you, please? Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Jagdeep. What a bio now. That sounds far too long. I'm going to have to shorten it up. And actually, colleagues, whilst Jagdeep said if you can be interactive, it will be great, but will be dull if you don't. I'm going to question that this is going to be dull if you don't, right, Kara? I mean, we bring a party when we come to town. So how are you today?
We're known for it.
Yeah, absolutely. But how are you today? Are you good? Thanks for joining.
Yeah, I'm all good. Yeah, just enjoyed the lovely sunshine and everything. I think that's making the day even better.
Right. And I know that you are heading straight out after this to a very fun session with a girlfriend. So we will not keep you more than is needed. But Kira, I'm going to start my session with a presentation on youth employment and the work that we've been doing, and of course, Youth Employment Week. And then I'll bring you in at the end to talk about your personal experiences, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Okay, I'm just about to share my slides, colleagues, and away we go. So as Jagdeep said, it's Youth Employment Week this week, a huge week-long celebration of all is good of young people and youth employment. We know that we have nearly 900,000 young people not education, employment or training. And this summer, as every summer, is a key transition moment for lots more young people who are leaving education, whether that's secondary, college or university or other forms of education, and looking to enter the labour market for the first time, which will make that squeeze on youth unemployment even more pressing. So Youth Employment Week comes every July, and it's a moment for us to really shout loud about the support, the brilliant opportunities that are available to young people everywhere. In our census last year, young people told us that they just didn't think they'd find a good opportunity where they live. And so super important that we make sure that we are showcasing all of the good stuff out there to boost their confidence and their awareness of opportunity. It is not too late to get involved in this week's Youth Employment Week. Today is all about celebration. So if you and your organisation have got something to celebrate regarding young people and opportunity, we want to hear from you today. So pick up through the campaign today and share what you've got going on with us. Okay, so a little bit about Youth Employment UK before I get started. Jagdeep, are you telling me that I'm quiet? Have I got a problem? Kira, can you hear me?
I can hear you better now. It was a little bit, yeah, it's a bit intermittent. I can hear you better now because it was showing like a weak signal indication, but that's gone. So hopefully it should be a little bit better.
Oh dear. I'm really sorry. This crowd share wouldn't let me put my headphones in. That's better.
I think that's better.
I'll sit
now.
a bit
Yeah.
closer to the mic. Okay, thanks, Kira. I'll sit a bit closer to the mic, and hopefully this will pick up for everybody. So for those of you that don't know, Youth Employment UK is a not-for-profit social enterprise that was set up in 2012 to tackle youth unemployment. We do that in 3 ways. Fundamentally, and most important, underpinned in all the work we do, is youth voice, making sure that we listen to the experiences, the very live and real experiences of young people. And we use that information to provide services directly to young people and to support employers and to support policymakers. So the work that we do kind of spans all aspects of youth employment, supporting young people aged 11 to 30. As I mentioned, we are now at 900,000 NEET young people. So that's the highest youth employment record that we have had in nearly 8 years. And that means nearly 1 in 8 of our young people are not in education, employment or training. And it is a really complex picture, which I'll come on to briefly. But what is adding to that complex picture is that also young people's self-confidence in their futures is at an all-time low. Political changes we know is coming. We're starting to get all of the announcements following the King's speech on education reform and welfare reform, which is very, very welcome. But actually, there is more that we can do individually to support this journey for young people from education into employment. And we're going to talk a lot about that in this session today. I can hear you I can hear that. I can see that I'm still breaking up. I'm not sure how I can change that. See if being somewhere in my house makes a difference. Is that better, Kira?
That is clearer.
Okay. You might just get the dogs in the background now, so apologies for that, everybody. I normally don't work from home, but I have to today. So yeah, hopefully this will work. So in this session today, we're just going to talk about the evidence and insight that we have from both young people and through our Good Youth Employment benchmark, and touch on some of those policy challenges that Labour have now got to deal with. So why do we have such sticky youth unemployment problems across the country? Well, it really is true. Depending on who you are, depends on your success from education into employment. Who you are matters. If you are a young person who is Black, Asian, ethnic minority, if you are someone who is LGBTQ+, has mental health needs, has disability, special education needs, you are going to struggle to make that transition from education into employment more than your peers who do not have those protected characteristics. It is still a really big challenge for young people to move from education into employment. Where you live matters. We'll probably hear about some of that from David Gordon, but we have some real pockets of high levels of youth unemployment, including in the Birmingham area, but also the northeast, the northwest region. But actually, I can still see the challenge coming through. Lauren, are you here? And can you pick this up for me? Because I don't know how I can fix my audio. It won't let me attach my mic. Martin, can you see if Lauren Mystery is a group and make her able to speak? Because I'm sure this is a terrible experience for colleagues.
Yeah. Do you want to bring me on? Hi LJ, yeah, it's okay for a little while and then it's crackling up. I think if we can get Lauren on, because I presume she knows the slides and whatever. So
which one?
So Lauren Mystery was asked to join.
No, David, I'm really sorry, colleagues.
No, it's fine, LJ. David, are you while we're doing this, David, are you able to jump on and come on with your slides?
If that works for LJ,
yeah. If we just change the agenda around slightly, okay. And it might be better so we can get this resolved.
that's
Apologies,
fine.
everyone. We're just sort of juggling the agenda around.
Okay, that's fine. So while we're just juggling things around, I'll bring my slide. And thank you all. And my name is David Gunn. I'm head of employer services at the West Midlands Combined Authority, and my role is all things employer skills. So how do we support our employers in terms of creating future pipeline into their job roles, and also supporting workforce development. But just before I probably start, given Youth Employment Week and celebrating Youth Employment Week, I'd like to pass on my thanks to all of those who've been involved in this week. LG, I've seen lots of work from you in terms of various blogs and briefings on what we need to do to try and tackle some of the challenges we've got within the across the UK and obviously in England, also impacting us in West Midlands, and that's been really helpful for us, certainly in terms of us pushing the agenda within the West Mids. One of the things I've had last night, I had a bit of a restless night in thinking about where we're at with youth employment in the UK. Part of that was because reflecting on what I was seeing being played out online in Twitter. You'll probably get the gist that I'm not from the West Midlands. I'm actually from Leeds, and I was brought up in Hare Hills, where I'm a son of two Irish parents who came from Ireland in 1966, and I was brought up in that area. And from the age of 8, obviously I moved on in life and I moved into other areas of Leeds, but that area gave me a lot of grounding in terms of where I'm at right now. And where I'm at right now is that obviously I'm talking to great people and being seen as a skill sort of leader in the sector, which is great. But I left school with nothing, and I look at the opportunities which are available right now and the opportunities which were available to me when I was 16, 2 years ago, of course. What I could access, and it's quite shocking actually when you think about your journey to where you're at right now and start to think about where you were at the age of 16. And if you got the opportunities, or if young people got the opportunities which you had at that point, and I tend to think that if I can take this path I took at the age of 16, going into work for the first time through a youth training scheme at that opportunity, that time I wouldn't probably be sat here right now, where I wouldn't have worked with employers who've invested in me to get me where I'm at right now. But I don't necessarily think that some of those opportunities are available now to what they were like back in 1992, and that's a challenge for us. And how are we gonna shift that? And I suppose that's where I start to think about, from a West Midlands perspective, what do we need to be doing to tackle some of these challenges within our region, because we have got high levels of youth unemployment. We know that youth unemployment is rising across the UK, but especially in the West Midlands. And we've got some real stark challenges within the West Midlands. We have got 3 out of the 5 top areas in the UK who are currently have got the highest levels of youth unemployment. So we've got Wolverhampton, which has got the highest rate of youth unemployment, quickly followed by areas of Walsall and Birmingham, which is a real challenge for us. And these numbers, sadly, are actually rising. And this is just what I'm showing with you now and sharing now is actually the claimant count. That doesn't take into account those young people who are currently claiming personal independence payments and things such as that, where we've got health barriers who can't move into work and they are economically inactive. So there is a lot of data out there. So it's really important that we look at the fullness of all of that data and don't just get locked in on claimant count. We also think about those individuals who are not necessarily claiming and not necessarily looking for work, but are economically inactive. So that's a real challenge for us, not just in this region, in the West Midlands, but also nationally as well, but particularly severe in our region. And we're viewing this now as not just about a people in place challenge. It should also be focused as an economic challenge for the region as well. We often talk about economic growth within the region and our high growth clusters, but we've also got to think about people in place within all that and bring our residents with us in that journey. That's why it's been quite helpful to see some of the things in the King's speech, which is coming out. A lot of the ministers who've been talking about youth poverty, aspects such as that, were really important for us in terms of that people in place angle. And no doubt you'll be hearing a lot more from that from the other speakers to the panel today. So a couple of other areas for us. What we've been doing as part of our as part of our response to youth unemployment in the region, we've been thinking a little bit about, well, what are the drivers for youth unemployment? Where does it happen? Where's it come from? And ultimately, we've come up with a nice little colour code in terms of these sorts of challenges. So the blue for us recognises where we've got drivers affecting young people. So certainly in terms of young people not necessarily ready for work, English and maths, which is a particular challenge for us in the West Midlands, given that our GCSE profile is quite low, especially in English and maths compared to the UK average. We've also got the drivers impacting on youth unemployment around employer demands, so elements of skills shortages, fewer employers actually hiring young people, especially in terms of apprenticeships, and also the concerns of the various economic headwinds and tailwinds which employers are experiencing, certainly over the last few years, and will continue to do so as they set to transform their businesses around areas such as net zero, leading to longer term economic growth. There is also then the wider sort of challenges in terms of the wider inequalities in the system. So we've talked about, and the Secretary of State earlier this week has talked about child poverty, which is actually for us really important. We've got so many young people who are actually, in terms of either in care, but also in terms of free school meals, which is then impacting on their longer term employment prospects. But it starts at such a young age. And it's good that the government are actually thinking right at that young age about how we're going to address this challenge, certainly from a 0 to 19 perspective. Whereas when we get involved from a devolved perspective at age 19, it's very difficult for us to intervene within the system and to turn things around. And then finally, the green aspects talk about the system and structural barriers, which makes the system quite difficult for an individual to sort of navigate. So where we've got short-term funding, we've got national policy versus place-based policy, and then we've got the fragmented skills system. So there are a lot of drivers creating the situation which we've got right now within this region. The other challenges for us, certainly in terms of going back to the point about health and well-being, is a particular challenge. There are 20,000 young people in the West Midlands currently claiming personal independence payments. Of those young people, around about 7 in 10, or I think it's approaching 8 in 10 of those young people are claiming PIP because of their mental health situation. So they're unable to work due to mental health barriers. That is a significant increase on where things were at pre-pandemic, and really sort of signals that we're in a very different place now in terms of tackling challenges for young people. We do have challenges, I think, in terms of our curriculum. And I don't necessarily think that sort of our curriculum in many ways is able to respond to the challenges which we've got right now. I think focusing on qualifications isn't necessarily going to be the right way to get ourselves out of this. We need to be thinking more widely about the pastoral support and the coaching and mentoring piece to support young people in identifying those particular barriers and challenges which they may have, which will then give them the confidence and resilience to be able to move on into higher level skills, into skills training. So we've got those sort of challenges within the system which we need to address, and that's where I start to move on to our response to all of this from a West Midlands Combined Authority perspective. Our mayor is quite determined to address this issue, and rightly so. He views this as his number one priority within the West Midlands through his term as mayor about tackling youth unemployment, because he believes that one of the key elements of economic growth is by supporting our residents into good jobs and their future career progression, and starting them with youth unemployment is a good way of actually demonstrating that. So he's committed to work and create 20,000 workplaces for young people across the region, recognising that young people are 6 times more likely to be not in work than where they've not had work experience opportunity. And that's a big number, so 6 times more. And if you think about that in the context of all of those cohorts of young people who were impacted by pandemic, I get often told, stop talking about the pandemic, it's gone. Well, actually, if you think about it, we've got young people who are in school, young people in colleges, young people who are in universities who've all missed out on some form of employer work experience during that period, during that 2-year period. That is significant in its volume. And when you start to work on those individuals who've not had work experience are 6 times more likely to be unemployed, that's a challenge for us. So we need to try and create more work experience places for our young adults so they can actually get that those life skills and soft skills which they can develop in the workplace to enable them to prepare themselves for the world of work in the longer term. And we're going to do that through a range of different sort of solutions, mobilising our key partners and stakeholders in creating those opportunities, but also making sure that we are aligning to government's ambitions around this piece, around the youth entitlement. And we're going to be scaling some of our key programmes. So Jagdeep, who's on today from Pathway, is one of our Path to Apprenticeship providers. So we see the Path to Apprenticeship programme as being a gateway into good apprenticeship jobs and also into good jobs, and expecting to scale that programme certainly over the next 2 to 3 years. At this moment in time, we've committed to 3,300 places over the next 3 years, but I suspect it's going to be more in the longer term. And also wanting us to leverage the work coach support within DWP, but also start to really build on the work within the youth hubs in this space, and also align with our powers around creating an all-age career system for the West Midlands. So starting to link together the system in terms of careers and education, independent advice and guidance to skills and skills pathways. I also want us to build on developing our support around mental health and physical health, recognising those 20,000 young people who are claiming PIP due to mental health. How do we do that? How do we connect the system more effectively in terms of health and wellbeing? And one of our key anchor programmes we've just developed now with our colleges is called Thrive at College, which is about tackling mental health amongst the student population. How can we do that there, but also how can we extend that type of offer to our other providers who operate in the system for us, such as our independent trained provider system, which does fantastic work for us. But we've also really got to double down on that place-based collaboration. That's going to be really, really important about how do we work more effectively with our voluntary community sectors in this space, and start to think about hyper-local solutions as well. So that's working with our local authorities, working with voluntary community sector organisation, working with our colleges, independent training providers, and creating a system-based response at a place level. That's going to be quite a challenge for us, but that's what we're going to need to do to be able to respond to this challenge. And I think finally for me, I think some of the things we might want to think about after you've heard from me, and obviously the other great speakers we've got today, is about what ideas you've got, what you think we should be thinking about in the West Midlands about tackling youth employment. How do we actually support those young people who are in employment as well? How do we continue to support their longer term career progression? This is about opportunity. At the end of the day, we know we've got, even though we know we've got a high number of vacancies. Appreciate this time last year there was a million vacancies unfilled within the UK. That number's slightly dropped, but it's still at 900,000 based on the census, based on the data which was released yesterday. So there's still lots of jobs out there. But so how do we build that continuous progression? And I think finally, how do we engage employers in a different way? I know this is often a conversation we talk about, but we've got to start to think about how we can ensure that our employees are in the system, engaged in the system, but are also supported within it. We expect a lot from our employers, but sometimes I don't think we necessarily give them the support they actually need within the system, especially we're talking about them asking us to help us with young people who've got some complex barriers and complex issues. What is the wraparound support we can provide those employers so that they feel comfortable and confident about taking on a young person who's got that barrier, but they believe they can create a career for that young person within their business. So a few things there to take away, and I'm looking forward to the discussion a little bit later. But that just sets the scene from me, Jagdeep, in terms of where we're at from a West Midlands perspective. So I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, David. That was really, really insightful, and it's fabulous to know that the West Midlands Combined Authority, amongst other combined authorities, are really focusing on young people and the issues of young people and promoting young people within sort of the employment and skills sector. We don't have any questions, but however, we do have a panel session at the end, and I'm sure we'll have some questions then. And so if we can please go back to LJ and Lauren and Chiara. I think Lauren's picking up LJ's presentation now, and hopefully the audio has been sorted. So Lauren, are you there? And Chiara, are you there?
Oh, yep, I'm here.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm here too.
Wonderful. Do you have the presentations or the presentation?
I hope so. What a day. What a day. What a week it's
Well,
been.
days.
What a
Hello,
week
hello.
it's been.
All here to test us.
For sure. What a test of this day too. So yes, I do. And I think it just goes to show that 3 is better than 1. 3 amazing women here to share Youth Employment Week, Youth Employment UK, and the Good Youth Employment Benchmark this week too, which is good. So hello, I'm not able to share my face, but I'm Laura Mystery, the Deputy CEO at Youth Employment UK. LJ, did you want to try and speak and catch up with where we were, or are you happy? Bystander. Bystander it is, I think, in this moment. So what LJ was running through before we were caught off was just a little bit of a recap on the landscape, and I know David has covered some of this work here today too. So in terms of the session and why it's so important, and what we're kind of trying to capture here too, is for kind of 900,000 young people who are currently NEET, young people's confidence at an all-time low, their belief that they'll be able to find a good quality opportunity where they live is lower than it's ever been. We will in September release our Youth Voice Census data, and I keep promising the staff team that I won't share any big key insights, but I can't help myself when we're doing this information, and in these really important moments where we're really trying to understand where young people are, is that again this year the number of young people that believe they'll be able to progress into a quality opportunity to work or to learn or to train further is even lower than it has been before. And now last year it's that somewhere around 17%, so it will tell you a little bit as to where those numbers are growing. But we are hopeful in terms of what's next too. So we are here today to share a little bit about where young people are. So from the Youth Voice Census in 2023, we really heard that story from young people about how disaffected and disconnected they felt, anxiety, mental health challenges, the all too familiar narrative we've heard from young people as to how they are feeling, but actually they took the biggest step in last year's Youth Voice Census to be actively disengaging in opportunities, actively not feeling like they could participate in a work or a training opportunity in and around them. They constantly were feeling that pressure to catch up. Disruption continued after COVID, and actually disruption within education is up again this year for young people at higher rates than it was within COVID, due to a lot, in some part due to strikes, but actually a lot of health, both mental and physical health, stopping young people being able to work in those, being able to feel like they can participate in those education environments. It left a lot of young people fearing for what the future might be for them. It left them unsure of how the world would look and feel when they were ready to be able to participate in it, and whether they'd know the skills, opportunity, and have the work experience they had too. For those young people in work, they were feeling the same kind of stress and pressures, workloads, sickness, keeping them off, but also their managers and staff team off too. And quite a lot of young people currently in the workplace had faced issues with anxiety and or depression as they were looking for work, or currently as they were in the working environment. What we always hear from young people in work is that our apprentices are our happiest of workers. Actually, that structure of having just more than a line manager in and around you to support you, having a really clear training plan and training moment, and having other people in and around you responsible for your general well-being, learning, training, and of course the tasks you do were really important too. In terms of where that leaves us in terms of kind of significant changes, and I think it's fair to say we're all hopeful for what may happen next as we see a new government come into place, but a significant change is needed, and we're still looking at austerity. We're still looking at economic and budgets being squeezed, and the education and skills, kind of the education and skills platform that's been inherited. We've known there've been systems that have been broken within there for a long time. There are no quick fixes within this, but every year we see more young people having to leave their structured education system to go into a world that isn't quite ready to prepare them for what's next too. But the opportunity and support, pleased to see, particularly around kind of devolution and the opportunity to have those skills ongoing as well. Today, and to bring part of all of that too, is the second annual Youth Employment Week. We as an organisation have been set up to tackle youth unemployment and to ensure there are quality opportunities for young people. Last year we launched Youth Employment Week to bring together young people, employers and the systems in and around them to share and drive the creation of opportunities for young people. We hear from young people about how disengaged they might feel, how their confidence is low that they'll be able to access opportunities, but so much good work is happening. And actually, Youth Employment Week is about bridging that gap for all of us too, for young people to be able to connect, but to have those places where employers can connect with young people too. This slide is just a sheer slide of joy. If you have been on LinkedIn this week, you will hopefully, as my marketing team will attest to, been bombarded with joy around youth employment. We have had employers going into schools for the first time. We've had local authorities being kind of supporting of that too. We've had the first kind of more creation of work experience opportunities, and we've been able to share this insight and information with young people. The opportunities young people have to explore, experience, and gain employment into work are hugely important, and we are so grateful. Yeah, I love that, Jagdeep, too. And this week I did share earlier in the chat when I thought my job here today was just to be the hype woman for this day, but I did share earlier in the chat today too. We are looking for everybody to be involved in youth employment this week too. We are sharing our own career journeys and what we've learned along the way. As we talk about kind of careers and opportunities for young people, we tend to think of them as linear. They tend to get this impression that it's a linear path, and we all know that it isn't. And they are so ready, young people, to hear about what we've been through, what we've learned, how we didn't know we'd have these crazy jobs we have here today as we're presenting to you. In terms of being able to really bring together good youth employment practice with what we know about how young people feel, about who they are, where they live, and what they'll be able to access, we have been working for the last 2 years on a project to digitalise our support that we offer to employers. Youth Employment UK since 2012 has had a way of monitoring the standards that employers should adhere to if they are working and engaging with young people. They've had many different iterations and they've changed quite a few times, but at the base of it were a set of principles that young people had told us, employers had told us, and the wider sector had told us would really work if we were able to bring this together. We have always managed kind of employer behaviour, if you like, within that way. But after securing some funding from the Futures Foundation 2 years ago, we were able to revolutionise the way and the digital platform that we were able to have employers engage with us too. So it started a mammoth journey of engaging with employers, running national roundtables and programmes with employers to really understand how at the moment they monitor and measure practice around how they explore, how they provide explore opportunities where they might do assemblies, career talks, go into schools, run, and attend careers fairs, how they provide work experience, and how they provide employment opportunities. We know these three things make a difference to young people not just so that they can fill up a CV and pass an interview, but when we think about the disconnection that they feel, that sense of social cohesion, the places and spaces that are reducing for them to be able to grow their skills, engage with people from different backgrounds, different places, and really understand who they are within their local community, but in the wider context of the world too. The Good Youth Employment Benchmark, as exists today, we piloted it across last year, but early last month we launched a new iteration of the Good Youth Employment Benchmark, which has been built to support the key findings and information that we know. So we heard from employers of different sizes across different regions and in different sectors as we piloted the first iteration of this benchmark last year, around how not just realistic they are about needing to engage a younger workforce, but how enthusiastic and ambitious they are to create opportunities for young people. What, though, they found quite difficult was this was coming from a place that was quite reactive. Only 15% of employers had a youth employment strategy or knew what the overall aims were. For the majority, they were now trying to piece that together after the introduction of things like T-levels or changes to the apprenticeship levy. They hadn't been able to come back together again to really build this into a cohesive strategy. And as we know, for these sorts of programs to work, we need youth employment strategies in place for employers to feel kind of comfortable and confident that they're in the right place and on the right track to be able to move it forward. That systemic approach is hugely valuable. We heard from employers too that for the most part, they were using mediators and networks to engage with young people. They were doing this really well for those within education systems, trusted networks that have been supported with great initiatives, particularly with careers and enterprise company coordinators and the careers hubs that were in place too. For the most part, employers were connecting with networks at key transitions points from the ages of 13 to 19, but actually they really struggled to know how they could connect with networks outside of that. As we look at rising economic inactivity, employers were not sure how they could connect in a meaningful way with NEET young people, those from specialist groups or specialist faith groups as well. They really wanted support from us to be able to make those connections and networks. The reality is it's more difficult. There are smaller groups of people. They are harder to reach. The time and the energies in place for that were on it. Employers were really ready to kind of go on that journey with us too. As we looked with employers about committing to the future, they really value the hybrid models that are available. A mix of in-person and digital experiences were needed. There were limited resources from employers. The world of work has changed. Being able to offer in-person work experience and the number of opportunities has reduced. And employers were really ready for us to support about thinking kind of innovative ways that we might be able to support the growth of those opportunities, but also to think about how they could measure and monitor what would work in this changing world of work, what young people would want to see too, which leads us on to the kind of championing of evidence and evaluation. For the most part, all employers were doing great feedback loops with young people who were coming into programs or who they were hiring. It's brilliant to see. Youth voice is so vital and so important, but they were ready to have better evidence and evaluation captures of overall programs, being able to design and develop programs with evidence and evaluation built in from the very beginning, so that they could support what they were hearing in terms of the feedback. So we put all of that together, all of the things that we've learned, and launched earlier this month a first of its kind digital tool, the Good Youth Employment Benchmark. And I think the next slides show what it looks like in its moment. Essentially what happens is that employers come on and we ask them a series of questions about the activities that they undertake around explore experience and employment opportunities. It measures and monitors where they are against standard practice that we have, and it supports them with incremental improvements that they can make in the next 12 months. We all know to change the systems and structures, it is a big shift. But what the Good Youth Employment Benchmark provides are the incremental things, the steps you can take as an employer today to drive change for young people and for your organisation to be better on their journey for the 12 months to come. Accessing the benchmark is available as through membership of Youth Employment UK. You will go in, you will talk about the work that you have undertaken in the 12 months prior to you starting the benchmark, and you'll only fill in questions and answer information around the things that you are actually and actively doing. It's supported with video tutorials and information on kind of what's important, but it is as simple as ticking the boxes and putting in the information that you need to know. As we were working our way around the country, talking to employers, they were all really keen to have really in-depth evidence and evaluation, but they were also really keen that we kept the survey as short as possible. It's fair to say we met them in the middle, somewhere between the two. We can't give good, insightful information by only asking employers 10 questions. So it is really robust, in-depth survey. We worked with the Institute of Employment Studies to look at how frameworks, benchmarks, marks and badges can make a difference. And actually the feedback and insight we had from the Institute of Employment Studies in our report was that very few of the benchmarks and frameworks available were rooted in robust evidence base. What that meant was we weren't able to build for the future the evidence that we'd need as to what practices make a difference and who they make a difference to, so that we could support the creation of more of them too. So it is about committing to an evidence base, but actually what you get out of it as an employer are practical steps to move you forward on your journey to good youth employment. What you get is a report that does make the most of technology and reporting, but actually it has that human element to it too. We're not giving up on the fact that as humans, we have expertise, intelligence and insights, and we understand the nuance of the size of the organisation, the region, the sector, the stuff that's happening in and around it, which is so important to be able to measure where you are as an employer and give you insight as to how you can support what's happening next too. So as part of that, and as we think about what we've heard from young people and then what we've built for employers, I'll bring on the magnificent, which is a word I haven't said in a while, Kira, because I haven't seen you for a little while, I suppose. Kira, who is the chair of our Youth Ambassador Board at Youth Employment UK. But Kira, please come on and talk to us about you and your journey from education into your apprenticeship.
Thanks. So hi everyone, and LJ sends her apologies. She's tried logging on lots of times, but it's just not working and she has no audio, so she sends massive apologies there. So me, I completed my GCSEs, went into college, I guess the traditional way to then go on to further education, and I completed my A-levels in English Literature and Language, Politics and History. And through my experience at college, so I had my form tutors and my teachers giving me advice. And the whole idea, because I think when you pick certain subjects, especially when they're A-levels rather than B-Techs, the expectation is that you'll go to university. And I thought that's what I would do. And so I was filling out my applications and doing all of that. And I decided actually I wanted to take a year out because that's not what I wanted, because I didn't know what I was going to do after university. And I thought, well, if I don't know what jobs I want to move into, going to university for a degree, because I was looking at doing history and politics, which I still enjoy to this day. But I thought, well, it feels like my choices of career are then quite limited. So I thought, let's take a year out and decide. And I've never looked back. That's when I started looking at apprenticeships, because I was still set on getting a degree. And then that idea's kind of faded a little bit. So I was looking at degree-based apprenticeships. And then after that, I was scanning all websites under the sun, looking at different apprenticeships, different sectors. And this is when I stumbled across Youth Employment UK. And it was actually my mum that discovered them and said, you should, have a look and maybe sign up to be an ambassador. It gives you something to do on your gap year. And I went, yeah, what's the worst that can happen? The worst they're going to say is no. And obviously here I am, I think nearly 5 years. I think this end of this year will be 5 years that I've been with Youth Employment UK. So, which has been amazing. And right now I've finished my apprenticeship in engineering in control instrumentation, and I am now a technical author. So I've been doing that since last September, which is crazy. It feels like only yesterday.
Oh, amazing. Oh, I love that. I was just trying to think up for our marketing team. It's like you can put the mum's favourite since what, 2019? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was November 2019. Yeah.
Fantastic. And looking back now, what support would have been useful from employers as you were looking to, I suppose, explore your apprenticeship, but also thinking about as you were entering the workplace as a young person for the first time, I imagine, what support would have been really useful for you?
I think it probably started even before, well, probably whilst I was applying, but a bit before that, and you've touched on it, and I think David as well touched on it in his presentation. It's work experience for young people. I didn't get any work experience, so I had to do, as I didn't do the Duke of Edinburgh Award, I did volunteering to make sure I at least had something to talk about in an interview. So I think consistent work experience, which I know COVID has had a big knock-on effect with that. So appreciate the fact that employers are really trying to find different ways of reaching more young people. So that would be the first thing, definitely working on that and making sure that it's consistent everywhere, so young people don't have to depend on where they live and just luck to get those experiences. And the second thing for me was it's the application process, I think, because I'm lucky that the company I work for, they have, I think the apprenticeship scheme, I believe it's just over 70 years that they've had it. So I'm lucky that they know. I think it's always been an evolving thing. So they have worked hard to make it, I guess, as accessible as possible. But I do think there's still improvement there, because the interviews are daunting for anybody, whether you're just entering the workplace or you've been in the workforce a long time. It's still really intimidating. So I think having questions phrased differently for young people, not to make it easier, but just to make sure that young people are given a fair chance. They can talk about phrasing questions in a certain way means that you think of different experiences, like, oh yes, I did this when I was at school, or I did this when I was volunteering, or I did this and that and the other. So that's what I think, making the application process a bit more streamlined and making interviews just, I think, that bit less daunting. I think that would be a good start, because after that, I have to say to my employer, they've been really good with supporting me. And once that application was over and once I'd gotten through, it was actually pretty good. So I'd say it's just the support beforehand that I think needs improving.
Amazing. And so what did your employer do really well when recruiting you and inducting you? What would you want other kind of organisations on the call or kind of insight and information can feed back into the Good Youth Employment Benchmark as to what is good in terms of recruitment? Phrasing questions differently, but did your employer share the questions beforehand or tell you what was going to happen?
I think they didn't share the questions beforehand. Again, I'm very lucky. My parents both have worked in the engineering sector in telecoms, and my dad is a telecoms engineer. My mum's worked with a lot of engineers for many years. So I was lucky that they could kind of give me a sense of maybe the types of questions and what kind of answers they might be looking for. But my employer didn't really give me anything. The one thing they did do really well, there were a few things, but one of the big things was they got back to me in a timely manner. I submitted my application, I think it was beginning of January 2020, and they got back to me within about 2 weeks to say whether I was successful, because there were a couple of stages. So once I did my application, I had to do a couple of rounds of aptitude tests before then doing my interview. It had to move online because of lockdown, otherwise it would have been in person. But they always did well in getting back to me, which I think was really good. And after my interview, I think they got back to me within about a week saying that I got the job. So I think that's a big one, because everyone's nervous after they've applied and after they've done an interview. But I think when your employer keeps in touch with you, or potential employer keeps in touch with you, that also helps, because you don't feel forgotten about and everything like that. I think the company induction was good. We had a big company induction for those of us that were successful, and there were people from across the business. And then once that was done and we got to know the company itself, we then moved into our smaller inductions. So I think that was quite good. You got to see the bigger picture first, and then you moved into your smaller groups to go. So that was the big picture. Now this is what we're doing. It felt a bit more personal, which was really good. And I think the final thing was my training was phased out over a few weeks as well. So there was lots of health and safety training, and rather than trying to cram all of that in and make that too intense. They spaced it out over, I think it was the course of a month or so. So I still got to start doing some work, and then the training started to make sense because you kind of did them both at the same time. So I think that's something they did really well as well.
Amazing, thank you. And then one last question for you, Kira. If there's one thing that you'd encourage employers to do or to do more of, what would it be?
Oh gosh, I was thinking when I sent this question, I had to sit and think for a while. But I think because there's lots of things as anything, but I think the main thing for me is mentorship. So obviously that's going on throughout the apprenticeship. But I think after, provided that the young person staying on is going into a role in the company, I think having a mentorship program, or having that established, is so helpful. Because I have a mentor. Started off more professional, but it's become more personal because your professional and personal lives always intertwine. And I've noticed so many benefits, like having someone as a sounding board, whether you're getting used to sending more professional emails, or you're inquiring about things, or finding out about different career routes, which is where I'm at the moment, because my line manager isn't as familiar with my area of engineering, and she's really eager for me to develop and progress, but she doesn't know much about it. So having a mentor who, in my case, is a facility engineer, he's gone through a kind of similar phase to me, because he did the same apprenticeship scheme I did back in the 90s. So he knows the potential challenges and everything. And it's just really nice to have someone there who's who isn't in the same role as you, who's outside of your who's not your line manager and is outside of your team, but still in the same world as you. I think it's really nice just to have an extra pair of ears, someone that you can, as I said, bounce ideas off of, who can give you a better idea of things. So I think, if employers do, if they do one thing, there's lots of important things that employers are doing and should be doing. But I think definitely in putting the time and energy in investing in in employees that they already have, and creating a mentorship scheme, because it's beneficial for everybody, for apprentices coming off the scheme and for employees as well, because it helps everybody's development. They get to know the new workforce that's coming through, and I think it's a benefit for everybody.
Thank you so much, Kira, and thank you for persevering through all of that. What a journey that was in technical abilities at Youth Employment UK this morning, from Kettering to Bedford. I won't say where Kira lives to. One final kind of call from me as I close up this session is that to be part of the Good Youth Employment Benchmark, an evolution of 12 years of insight, you have until the 29th of August to be included in this 2024 data set. But thank you so much, Kira. It is so amazing to hear your journey and to bring to life the challenges we're hearing from young people now too, about how disconnected they feel, about how there is less work experience and less opportunity. You talk a lot about luck, and I know that it is because of kind of the connections that you have, but actually it's a difficult journey, and it shouldn't be about luck with young people too. So thank you for sharing your stories. As always, it really makes a difference as we all sit and hear them, to think about how we and what we can do next. So thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauren, for stepping in. I can confirm that that LJ's IT issues have nothing to do with the global IT outage that's happened this morning. It is just a bit of an issue with their IT. And Kira, an absolutely fabulous story, a journey. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. I'm a strong believer in the impact and the power of lived experience and lived reality. So thank you very much for sharing with us. And I don't know whether you've heard of the Multicultural Apprenticeship Awards. You've probably got something behind me here that talks about those. And I'm not sure whether you've actually submitted a nomination in the past for those. But if you haven't, please take a look out for those, because you'd be a strong and very fabulous nomination. So thank you very much for sharing your story with us, and Laura for actually sharing all the impact and the fabulous work that Youth Employment UK are doing at the moment. So Youth Employment UK are a strategic partner of the Multicultural Apprenticeship Alliance, and we're committed to promoting equity, diversity, inclusion and social mobility in apprenticeships and skills. So next I'd like to introduce Eleanor Marseille from Youth Futures Foundation, the engagement manager. And Youth Futures Foundation have just recently become patrons of the Multicultural Apprenticeship and Skills Alliance. So welcome, Eleanor. So Eleanor is the engagement manager, as I say, at the Youth Futures Foundation, and she'll be sharing some of Youth Futures Foundation's evidence on recruiting and retaining marginalised young people in apprenticeships. Youth Futures Foundation is a national work centre for youth employment with a specific focus on marginalised young people. They want to see equitable future society where all young people have the opportunity to be in good work. So welcome, Eleanor, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Jagdeep. And thank you to Kira, Lauren and David as well. Fantastic presentations. I'm not surprised at all that LJ's technology packed in. They've had such a busy week over at Youth Employment UK that even the technology and the internet is giving up on them. So we are having a great week celebrating Youth Employment Week, and we're delighted to be here to talk to you all today. We've got loads to celebrate. As Jagdeep says, we are new patrons of the Multicultural Apprenticeship Alliance, which we're just so excited about. And hopefully it means that we'll be crossing many of the people who are here on this webinar today. We'll be crossing your paths, and you'll be seeing plenty of us. Whether that's an exciting thing or not, we'll let you decide after this presentation. But also to link into Lauren, your fantastic presentation and your work over at Youth Employment UK on the Good Youth Employment benchmarking tool. We are just so proud to be the funders of the development of the tool over the last 2 years, and we've really seen the amount of work that's gone into it from Lauren, LJ and the team, so we couldn't be prouder to be celebrating that this week as well. I'm just going to share my slides, and because I've got a video in my slide deck, I just need to share them in a slightly different way, so please just bear with me. And just a reminder that Jagdeep, you'll have to let me know if there are any tech problems, because I now can't see the chat. Great. Okay, so I'm Eleanor Marcy. I'm Engagement Manager over at Youth Futures Foundation. I'll tell you a little bit more about our organisation in a moment. I sit within the team that's called our Employer Engagement and Partnerships team. And really, to simmer that down, it's all about establishing really meaningful relationships, not only with employers, but with those who support them. I really related to what, David, you were saying about the support that's needed for employers. We demand and expect a lot from employers in the system, and sometimes that's really challenging. So my team, we're really looking to focus on what support is needed, what employers are struggling with, what really are the challenges in the youth employment space for employers. Essentially, we are looking to share our evidence and turn it into really impactful and effective action in the employer space. I'll tell you a little bit more about our organisation. Hopefully that will become a bit clearer as to who we are. So Youth Futures Foundation, we're an independent non-profit. We were founded in 2019, so we're still quite young. I don't know how long I can say that for, but it does feel like we're still sort of in our infancy. Although we're into our 5th year now, we're developing our new 5-year strategy, which feels like a really just amazing step. We're a growing organisation and we're really proud of what we've achieved. We are the National What Works Centre for Youth Employment. For those of you who don't know what that means, the What Works Network are a group of organisations such as ourselves, such as the Centre for Ageing Better, NICE is also one. So in our network, we essentially have the aim of influencing the way that the government and the public sector use evidence to make decisions about funding, to make decisions about what investment is made. So we are, as I said, the National What Works Centre for Youth Employment, which means that we are enthusiastic, to say the least, about evidence, and that will probably become clearer as I go on through my presentation. Our mission specifically is to reduce the employment gaps for young people facing the greatest challenges. So we're talking about marginalised young people, and some of the cohorts that we're particularly concerned and focused on are young people leaving the care system, young people with experience with the criminal justice system, SEND young people, and ethnically minoritised young people, alongside many other cohorts, but specifically as somewhere to start, those are the cohorts that we are really invested in understanding the barriers that they face. So it's all about reducing those gaps and really sort of bridging the gaps so that those young people can get into and keep good quality jobs. So we work in 3 ways organisationally. So as a foundation, we are in the very lucky position that we hold money that comes from the Dormant Assets Scheme. So we invest that money in promising practice and approaches. So we look for organisations and places that are doing really innovative, exciting work in the employment space, doing things differently, really focusing on those cohorts to try and shift the dial. We fund those programs, but it's not just about getting money out of the door. In everything that we do, it's the feedback loop. We're doing it so that we can hear, is it working? What's working? Why isn't it working? What if we tweak this? So we generate really high quality evaluations from all of our grants, which help us to understand really what works. The second strand of work that we do is we generate evidence. So we commission independent research, we conduct our own research, and that's really high quality, robust research that tells us more about what's going on across the sector, whether that's in apprenticeships, whether that's for a certain group, whether that's for looking into the experiences of employers. So we're really building that evidence base. And it's not just about having the evidence and not just letting it sit on the shelf, it's about how we curate that evidence. So we now, in our 5th year, have a really fantastically helpful portfolio of tools, such as our Youth Employment Toolkit, our data dashboard, our data and gap map, which essentially curate high quality evidence so that members of the employment sector can use that and can access it in a really accessible way. The third strand, which is more where I sit, so it's all about using that evidence to drive policy change and employer practice change. So really translating and unwrapping what we know works and really driving that into the laps of those who can make that change on the ground. Which is really very exciting, and we're really on a mission to do that, and we're doing really well with it. I've got a video to play you, but before I play it, I mean, we've heard a little bit from Lauren, LJ and David in the sense that the statistics aren't looking great and they persist around youth unemployment. I could sit here and list off all of the headline statistics that you've probably heard many times, and it can feel quite disparaging when nothing changes. So 900,000 young people currently NEET. Care leavers are 4 times more likely to be NEET than their peers. As I said, I could list this and I could go on, but I think today is a good opportunity for us to hear directly from young people on what the barriers they're experiencing are, just to bring it to life. And as I go through my presentation, that will be a theme. You know, we can list out the statistics and, you know, we can feel quite detached and quite powerless when we're faced with them. But really it's about understanding and really digging into what that looks like and what that feels like for young people. So I thought this was a really good opportunity. So this video is of our Future Voices group. It's 20 young people with lived experience of the barriers that exist across the employment system and persist to sort of alter their experience of finding and retaining good quality employment. So these ambassadors, the Future Voices group, they sit at the heart of what we do. They always have done since our inception. They share their insights with us. They share in the decision making at the heart of the organisation, and they lend their expertise, which just help us to make the right decisions about our direction and our work. So here they are, they're talking about how employers can play a role in really narrowing the gaps for young people. And much of it really is, springboarding off what you said, Kira, about things like making the recruitment process easier, work experience. So let's hear from them, and please do let me know if you can't hear this video.
Young people can make a massive impact on your company. We as young people see the world in a much better way with we'll see what is working, we'll see what's not working.
I think employers can make it more inclusive for young people by creating a more equitable interview process. So, for example, by making the interview more of a mutual experience where it's not just a kind of prescriptive question and answer, by having questions in the interview process that allow for different sorts of answers and kind of creative ways of responding to them, as well as support.
My name is Zoya. I'm part of the Future Voices group, and I would say that one of the key barriers which young people face in employment is definitely getting their first job. I would say that's a major milestone because most people I've interacted with, especially those in rural areas, really struggle on how to put their CV together and also just getting any sort of experience that will qualify them for their first job.
More young people should have mentors because it's really difficult navigating the working world, particularly as young people have just come out of their education. I don't think we're given enough guidance as to what to do after we finish education.
I'm Zach, I'm a Future Voices ambassador, and I think with employers it's actually really important to be focusing on retention and sitting down before hiring people and having the kind of uncomfortable discussions and sort of going to those difficult places and really facing that in your organisation to sort of build a better environment and a better community to be bringing people into and supporting people in.
And I wouldn't say that there is a particular thing that a particular barrier that young people face when it comes to employment, as there is so many and the intersections of them are huge. Like there's a lot, it's undeniable that there's a lot of ethnic disparities when it comes to employment, particularly in places like the West Midlands. But at the same time, there's also things like the glass ceiling that like women face, and then there's ableism, and people may not be able to get into employment as some of their needs might hinder them from being able to go further within their career.
The education system has not kind of adapted to the modern world and hasn't equipped us with the skills to kind of go into meaningful employment and to kind of succeed.
Hi, I'm Olivia and I'm part of the Future Voices group. I think a way for employers to connect with young people is to ensure that they're going into schools a lot earlier, definitely before sixth form, and ensuring that they speak to young people, speak about how they can bridge the gap between school and employment to ensure that when someone reaches university level and reach apprenticeship level as well, they feel more comfortable with speaking to employers and learning more about their employment opportunities.
Groups for bringing that to life. It is so important whether you're an employer, an intermediary organisation, a service provider. Youth voice is the most valuable of evidence. So I would really encourage that you find opportunity to tap into that in your organisation. So slightly to pivot us now, I'm delighted to have been invited to talk with you today. As I said, at Youth Futures, we are super enthusiastic about evidence and the power that it has to really change the system. We've got tons of evidence on our website that's growing each year about things like apprenticeships, how impactful they are, mentoring, like Kira said. We've got reports that we've recently published about discrimination in the workplace, so please do check it out. I'd love to come back and share with you if there's anything in particular of interest. But today I thought it would be a really good opportunity to sort of step back from any particular evidence and look at the way in which employers can use evidence to your advantage in a really practical way. We've already heard an example of that in the Good Youth Employment Benchmarking tool, which obviously we're the biggest fans of. But let's just bring it to life a little bit, and hopefully the employers and the other people on the call today will step away from this with a good idea of what it really takes to use evidence and data in an effective way. I acknowledge that sometimes when we're faced with some of the statistics around youth unemployment, it's quite overwhelming and it's hard to know what to do with that data and evidence, especially when the change that needs to happen, it feels so systemic. But fundamentally, I'm just going to pop this onto the screen. Fundamentally, when we're thinking about evidence and data, there are parts to it that I'm sure that you'll really relate to when I sort of talk through them. So we look at data and evidence in four sort of phases, and they are super interconnected. We see all the time and hear really promising examples of employers and others using data in their practices, in their sort of strategies, and we hear that coming through. And this sort of model can be applied across the different parts of the system. So I hope that for those of you who aren't employers on the call today, you'll find a way to translate this into what you do. As I talk through this sort of model, I'd love it actually if you could put in the chat on each of these four phases, if you think as an employer you've been doing any of these activities that you can think of, please do pop them in the chat. I'll be delighted to sort of read through those after. So to start with, we've got, I'm going to go to our bottom right hand corner, we've got our create phase, which is all around generating new evidence. You might have seen that by way of the mandatory gender pay gap reporting that all organisations and companies are now doing, which is fantastic. It's really important because without this data, we don't know that there's a problem. And because employers are now committed to providing that data nationally, we are able to identify that there's a problem. Okay, so gender pay gap reporting is a really good example of our create part of our model. Translating is all around sort of synthesizing evidence, translating it so that we can cherry pick the really important headlines and make sure that we're able to understand that. So from the gender pay gap reporting, I would, from that, we'd look at which groups of women. Is it young women in particular? Is it in certain sectors? So really sort of translating what does the evidence say, and then we're going to move into our embed phase. So that's where we use the sort of synthesization of evidence and we actually embed it actively in practice. So we often see employers do things like EDI training. There are fantastic providers. You might be doing it in-house. It's often based on evidence that exists around the disparities in the workplace, which is fantastic. It feels like a really popular employer practice that we're delighted to see the rise of. Moving into our analysis and analyze sort of phase, this is where we've really sort of knuckled down on, we've put this action into place and now we're listening to hear, is it working? So increasing the understanding of who it's working for. And we can see that in things like staff surveys. It might be the EDI training comes with a post feedback survey. But before I go any further, I'm sort of using this as a model and showing you how in each of the four phases we can be doing activity. What I really want to highlight on this slide is that without going through the four phases on each of these sort of activities as a cycle or a process, you might be sort of doing action that means that data sits on the shelf. So for example, with the gender pay gap reporting, we see many large employers really pushing this, and they have done now for many years. But what we can also see is that the data exists, it sits on the shelf, but nothing's done about it. And we know that because some of the top employers in the UK, we haven't seen a change. We haven't seen the gender pay gap reduce. So that's a really good example of how, yeah, we're committed to creating evidence, but they're not really kind of committing to doing anything. And so it's just sitting over in our orange phase. Another example of that is how we're all quite committed to embedding evidence-based action, for example, the EDI training, but without really understanding and really taking the time to understand the impact or the meaning of that. So without the sort of translation of evidence that comes before the action, how will we know what's actually needed within our organizations or within our companies? Is there a particular problem to focus on? Why are we actually doing the EDI training in the first place? And what comes after that? And often we see with EDI training is that it's just a day of training. It's fantastic. Everyone feels really excited and energized by it. But then what next? What happens to really sort of analyze who's it helped? What's been the impact? So really just to stress, it's a cycle, and I'm going to move on to show you how this can work really, really effectively. So we all need to think about creating and curating our own evidence, but none of that means anything really unless we go the full circle. And I'm going to now show you how we can use this as a sort of a real process. And it's about questioning, what have we learned? How do we keep evolving? So how do we keep listening? How do we keep our ear on the ground? Whose experiences haven't we yet heard of and really understood? And I really liked that Lauren highlighted that youth voice and those feedback loops are so important. You know, statistics and data are only part of the story, but it's that storytelling, it's that real understanding of the people who are in your organisation. So now let's have a look at an example of how you could, as an employer, go on an effective evidence journey. So as I said, we're really proud funders of the Good Youth Employment Benchmarking Tool, which belongs to Youth Employment UK. So let's start with this. So as an employer, to create and commit to generating new evidence, you could very well go and do the Good Youth Employment Benchmarking Tool. I can't recommend it highly enough. So what you're doing there is you're giving all of your data, you're giving all of your evidence about your practices. And from that, as Lauren explained, they will then take that away and translate it. They'll synthesize it, what you've told them. They'll come back with your benchmarking report. They might say, well done, you've really cracked the nut with work experience, but now you really need to focus on your apprenticeship offering and diversifying that, making it more inclusive. So now we're moving through into the embed. You know what you need to do. You need to work on your apprenticeship approach. So using that bespoke evidence, you really embed that into your practices, making changes to your behaviours, really driving that up to the senior level decision making that you're doing organisationally. You might enlist the help of the Multicultural Apprenticeship Alliance, and that's where you can really pull on the incredible support and resource that's out there for employers. So we're going round the circle, but it doesn't end there. So you've put your apprenticeship offering in place. It feels like it's going really well. The apprenticeships seem happy, but really listen. So do those employee surveys. Really listen to young people who are in those positions, because you might find out, right, what's the next step? It's that young women are underrepresented, or that it's young people from ethnically minoritized backgrounds don't quite feel that sense of belonging that other that their peers are feeling. So listen and then go back around the circle. So feed that back into the benchmarking tool, get the support, get the direction, and go round and round, constantly listening and having those feedback loops. So that's it on a micro level, and it's a really good example of how you as employers can start to think about how you're effectively using evidence and data. So let's step back now and look at our approach. So Youth Futures Foundation, we are working on a systemic level, a sort of a macro level. We're using this model just like you can be. And I just want to take you on our journey, and just so that you can tap into some of the things that we're also doing. So again, we are benefiting from the Good Youth Employment Benchmarking Tool. It's not just there to serve the individual employers, it's also building that picture, that evidence, the missing data that we need about employer practice, which we're so excited by. And essentially that's why we have funded it, is because there is a gap in evidence about employer practice. We're then sort of matching that with things like employer trials that I'm going to talk to you about in just a moment. We then hear what employers are saying in the benchmarking tool, and then we really sort of build robust evaluations, research around that. We're then translating that, and I think you'll be really interested to find some of the tools on our website. So as I mentioned, the Youth Employment Toolkit, we've got a data dashboard which really sort of breaks down all of the different ONS statistics in areas, so that if you're working on a local level, you can really understand the landscape of data about youth unemployment in your area, and you can really respond to that. We've also really gone on a mission to translate and make our evidence accessible for employers. So for the employers amongst you, webinars, events, please come along, check out our website for our resources. But that's not all. If we just did those two steps, as I said, it would sit on the shelf. Great that the evidence is out there, but we really want to drive this, getting it into action. So we then take our evidence and we put it and commit to funding the programs and engagements that we know will get that evidence into action. So you might have seen recently that we've gone into partnership with Business in the Community, who are going to focus on driving some of the evidence around workplace discrimination for ethnically minoritized young people. We're also driving policy and collective action campaigns. Again, to really commit to this cycle, we don't stop there. So it's really about listening. So are the programs that we're funding actually working? Let's now listen to the communities. Let's listen to young people. We've got our Future Voices group. We've got our Employer Advisory Board. We're always doing case studies, really listening. If we hear that there's a problem, a persisting problem or a new problem, let's dig into that and let's do the trials. Let's do the research. Let's go round and round with this. So really, I don't want to, labour the point too much, but it kind of goes along with the saying that isn't measured isn't done. However, just measuring something won't solve the problem. I just want to show you one last example of our work, which I think will be particularly interesting for this the group on the webinar today. Please visit our website to check it out. We do an annual discrimination and work survey, which is the biggest survey of young people from ethnically minoritized backgrounds. So those aged 18 to 25 are asked annually about their experiences of discrimination, the impacts that discrimination has on their personal and professional lives, and their views on what employers and policymakers can do to tackle that. What I found particularly interesting amidst, you can imagine, all of the really stark sort of examples of discrimination that is taking place, probably the most promising thing that comes out of this is that young people feel that guaranteed apprenticeships is one of the most important and fundamental ways that the government and the employment system can really shift the dial for those in accessing good employment. So I'm really holding on to that, and I'd really love to share this research in depth with you. But just one more time, let's look at that cycle. So what we did was we created new evidence with the survey of 3,000 plus young people. We translated that. Please find the report and the video content on our website. We've now embedded that into practice, funding a 3-year partnership with Business in the Community. We're listening closely with all of the engagements from that partnership, but also the sort of the research that was done. So we've heard that guaranteed apprenticeships are really important. We're also hearing that there's a lack of supply. So what are we going to do? We're going to go back around the cycle, and we've now invested in a bespoke piece of research that's coming out this autumn about ethnic diversity in apprenticeships, which we'd love to come back and share with you. So just to end on a bit of an ask, so we need you to help with this evidence cycle. You can go and do it alone. I hope this has sort of made you think a little bit differently about how you're going to take on evidence and evidence-based approach, but we'd love to work with you on this. So we have heard evidence from employers through the Good Youth Employment Benchmarking Tool and through other ways about their practices. And we are now on a mission to trial and test those employer practices and interventions. They're the kind of things that we assume, they sound really good on paper. They're assumed to be helpful and inclusive in supporting marginalised young people into good employment. I'll show you a few of those examples in a moment. But until we really trial and test these practices, we won't know for sure what really works. And whether these things are really helping, whether they're really helping some groups, or whether they're actually damaging. And I really liked what you were saying, Kira, about the need for better work experience, for better application processes. So we are inviting the employers amongst us today to get in contact with us, to really test and help us to create robust evidence about what is and isn't working. We want to add to the evidence base so we can speak as a sector with confidence and clarity on what employers should be doing more of and what really works. So whether that's blind recruitment, it sounds fantastic on paper, but there just hasn't been that robust test of whether it works, and we'd really like to do that with an employer. Remove qualification asks. We heard of a big high street employer recently announcing that they are going to share interview questions, which sounds like it will have fantastic impact for those who face anxiety or those who are neurodivergent, but we just want to make sure that that is really the case before that's scaled up across the sector. So please, if you would like to be a trailblazer employer and lead the way in really sort of sharing and honing in on this with us, and if you employ large numbers of entry-level roles or apprenticeships each year, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to really go on that journey. So I'm going to include my email in the presentation deck that you'll get from Jagdeep. And really that's where I finished today, and I'll be really glad to take any of your questions. I've included a link to probably the sort of research that you'll be most interested by, which is our toolkit Unwrapped. It's unwrapping the evidence that we've got on apprenticeships for employers. But thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry if I've slightly gone over my time, but it's been great to be here. Thanks, Jagdeep.
Thank you, Eleanor. That was really insightful, and you're doing some tremendous work at Youth Futures Foundation. And I, having worked for a What Works Centre previously to here, I know the sort of the impact on that data and evidence can actually have in informing and influencing local, regional, national policy. So thank you very much for that really insightful presentation. So next, can I just bring? Sorry, I've just put a comment in the chat. Really, we'll probably run over sort of 5 minutes if that's okay. Obviously, we had the technical issues to begin with, but if I can just bring on my colleague Martin Chandler, who's the Chief Engagement and Enrichment Officer here at Pathway Group, and he wants to talk about sort of the Pathway Group provisions that we have in place to support the youth back into employment or closer to the labour market. So over to you, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you, Jag. No, thank you for the opportunity. And I must say, very insightful today, just in terms of previous speakers. A lot of, of everything that we sort of go out there and do and that we're thinking about, it's nice to know that others are out there with the same intent as us, and it is very much a matter of us sort of working together. The key sort of takeaway for myself in terms of the latest statistics, I'm not too much of a numbers guy, but for myself, it's at 900,000. Year on year, we've had that increase in terms of sort of unemployment, those young individuals looking for or needing those opportunities. A lot of it does rely on the likes of careers advice. I've got my 16-year-old daughter, she's just finished her GCSEs. It's looking at how do you inspire, how do you motivate the younger generation to look at and sort of explore work and those sort of opportunities. Is it education? Is it employment? Is it apprenticeships? And a lot of it starts with that sort of careers advice, those sort of conversations on how they actually move forward. Now here at Pathway Group, we are part of West Midlands Combined Authority in the Path to Apprenticeships. So what I wanted to do was take us a bit of time just to talk about sort of empowering the workforce of tomorrow, building those opportunities for the next generation ready for employment. We've heard a bit about Path 2, what it's there for. I wanted to sort of go into a little bit more detail from our point of view, or more my point of view in terms of what we're looking to achieve through it all, really. So for Path to Apprenticeships, we've created sort of a brand, and it is emerging talent. How we see this, it's a matter of engaging, inspiring, and motivating those young people. 9 times out of 10, you're at sort of an event, you're talking to young people, they're not too sure of what route they want to go down. The difference with our opportunities here, we're trying to bridge that gap between education and professional. How do they move forward? How do they develop those skills? How do they realise what those skills are? We've heard a lot today from sort of first-hand experiences in terms of sort of the interview process, being shown questions beforehand. Sometimes it's that preparation, it's that understanding. That's what we look to do. Really, for me, it isn't, sort of giving that creativity within sort of a classroom environment. It's that engagement, it's those activities. So, a young person is asked, well, tell me what your top 10 skills are. Tell us about yourself. They're able to talk confidently and able to inspire the employer at the same time. But first of all, they've got to be motivated, they've got to be engaged, and that's exactly what we plan to do through the Emerging Talent Programme. And it's all a matter of preparing people, or these young people, for apprenticeship opportunities. For us, it's about empowering them, building that initiative, developing that resilience, and building their confidence as they go as well. For myself, one thing that sort of stuck to my mind is about supercharging opportunities. Those opportunities need to be where they can understand what is out there and explore those possibilities as well. Sometimes people, if they're young, naive, maybe they've gone through college, they're not too sure what to do next, or they're just looking for that job. Sometimes it's a matter of actually breaking down, well, what skill set is it you've got? What's the understanding? How do we move that CV forward? What is the confidence when it comes to the interview? How do we support them? How do we give them the coaching and that personalised advice that they need to move forward to make those decisions? And that's exactly what we're doing on a day-by-day basis. How do we inspire them? How do we motivate them? And it is through activities. It's looking at those life skills they have. How do we develop them? How do we give them the exposures to them? So the program that we've created is built around transformational leadership skills, things like intrinsic vision, strategic relationships, looking at the connections that they can make. How do they use those connections to develop themselves? The intrinsic vision, what is it that makes them them? How do we give them that accountability? How do we make them aware of what's around them? And ultimately that resilient mindset, so they keep on moving forward. It's a matter of that confidence and that self-awareness. For ourselves, we're based in the West Midlands. We've got the unique opportunity of working in Birmingham, and it's at what I class as an inspiring area, which is Millennium Point. For me, if I was 20 years younger and I was looking to sort of move into jobs and I'm looking for that sort of apprenticeship opportunity to be inspired in an invigorating area within Birmingham city centre, there are so much opportunities out there. What I'm finding with the conversations that we have with these young people, that a lot of them want to get into digital and it's cyber, it's that prime area of being in the heart of Birmingham, having that opportunity of working for those sort of organisations. But it's a matter of dreaming big and them understanding that these are actually possibilities. One of the things that we do through the programme is, the power of apprenticeships. If we were talking 10 years ago, we'll be talking about the likes of David Beckham, Sir Alex Ferguson, Ozzy Osbourne, all doing apprenticeships. Nowadays, we're talking about our multicultural apprentices, those award winners, those where they've gone above and beyond, and really they're the role models of tomorrow. What we look to do with the programme is to inspire this next generation of apprentices for that next generation workforce, that workforce of tomorrow. So what I'm asking for is, in terms of how we can work together, there's some information, and yes, it will be circulated on emails as well, but how we can actually work together, just as sort of the other speakers in terms of, well, how can you get involved? It's very much similar here. If you're based in the West Midlands, you're based in Birmingham or anywhere within the United Kingdom, really, where we're looking at mock interviews, these are, skills that young people need to have in terms of how do they convey, who they are, how they their strengths and their weaknesses, and it's being able to support providing those interviews. 9 times out of 10 nowadays, you find that it's a Teams interview. These are opportunities and ways that you can actually support what we're trying to achieve via work experience. Again, if you're in the local area for Birmingham, we can bring these young people to you, provide them with that work experience. It may be that you're able to, maybe you're looking to recruit, and it's an opportunity of bringing in that young blood and a new perspective and how they move forward. Where we're looking for individuals, as we noticed through the stats earlier, in terms of mental health and well-being being a barrier, if you're a provider or you're a service provider of mental health support and well-being, please do get in touch. There's individuals that we can sort of refer into you, or even just to come in and raise their awareness. Sometimes people will have these barriers and they're not quite aware of it. And although we're working with them on a day-by-day basis, it's that partnership working. It's really having that concerted effort, that collective responsibility. Thinking about job opportunities, could it potentially be an apprenticeship? So that apprenticeship is where somebody comes in, develops those skills, the knowledge and the behaviours relating to the workplace. It's an opportunity for you to create that workforce of tomorrow. It really is. Ultimately, we're looking for the likes of role models. We've had some great speakers on today. I'll certainly be reaching out to them to see how can they come in and support us as well. Within the programme, we're looking at those sort of social skills. If you're hosting any type of networking events or careers fairs, please do let us know how we can, potentially bring these young people into those environments so they can develop their own knowledge, again, expanding on their connections. Now, on the 15th of August, we're planning to do sort of a showcase event where these young people have these exposures to employers. If you are in the Birmingham area and it's something you're able to support, again, please do reach out. We would love to sort of help or you to come in and support us on those events as well. So thank you very much for that opportunity to come and talk to you a bit about what we're doing from on the grassroots side of things, really engaging with those young people within the Birmingham and the Walsall areas. And again, if you are an employer or you're a provider within the area and you feel that you can provide, whether it's work experience or interviews or career opportunities, please do reach out to myself or Jag, my colleague Jag, and we're more than happy to have those sort of conversations. For us, it's a matter of igniting and inspiring these young people, giving them that motivation so they look at the next stages in their life as that positive route, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you for those sort of valuable insights. And it's great to see, and I know I work for Pathway Group, but other organisations also who are doing so much operationally for you, with regards to youth employment and trying to get people or youth people back into work. And there's a lot of great sort of programs and provision out there. So please let's continue to highlight in these and sort of getting our young people to utilise these programs and provisions as well.
I think sort of the motto for the past few years is, providers as a training and education provider, we can't go out there and do everything ourselves. We do need to work in partnership, and it's the likes of Youth Employment, Youth Futures that we need to be working with, and obviously the likes of West Midlands Combined Authority funding those opportunities. It is really working together to get the best out of everything, really, to help
absolutely
improve these rates overall.
Absolutely. We're a strong believer in collaboration with our sort of partners, our strategic partners, our advocates, commissioners, and also the stakeholders as well. So thank you very much. What I'd like to do really is just quickly. I know we're sort of really, we're overrun really, and but I'd just like to bring sort of our guest speakers back on stage, please, Luke. And I just really want to, before thanking them, I just really want to ask them one question. And it's sort of a generic question, really, but I'd really like to get your insights. So, apart from funding, so apart from funding, what would your one ask be for the new government to support youth employment? And David, you might want to touch on sort of the devolution employment bill and things such as that, and obviously the new mayor as well. But if you can just sort of give a quick answer, really, to that sort of potentially quite long answered question.
If I can jump in on this one just to start with, I think from my point of view, it's dealing more with careers advice. So there's a requirement for us as organisations to provide that careers advice, but then also looking, what are we doing for the younger generation? What else can we do? I know from my experience back in school, it was work experience. I was told by a careers advisor, apply for this job, you can go and be a baggage handler, just because it required the use of IT and things that was in there. And I know from sort of own personal experiences with family members that it's still lacking in those areas, really. So it isn't funding, it is making sure that careers advice is embedded in there, everything that we're doing, but it's for the younger generation as well.
Thank you, Martin. David, can I come across to you?
Okay, so I suppose, my asks of government right now, I suppose that's always an interesting one. So I think let's think about a couple of things and a couple of enablers, which will be super helpful. So I think certainly in terms of all employment support, I think we need to be refreshing what we're doing in terms of employment support young people, make sure it's targeted, make sure it's place-based, make sure it's hyper-local, and also to build under the role of VCS within that kind of space. So that kind of leads to our relationship from a CA perspective with DWP about how we can unlock that opportunity. I think we also need to, whilst everybody's locked in on apprenticeship levy as a stimulus in terms of a fiscal sort of stimulus, we need to think about policy around young people and how we prioritise apprenticeships to target young people. So that whole aspect of youth entitlement and youth guarantee, I think we need to speed up our work in that space quickly. And And I think there's only some, quick little wins we could do there to unlock the opportunities within the apprenticeship policy to prioritise, at least with the funding, some of the activity. I think we should also be thinking about that youth guarantee and the kind of bursary support and testing those. We're testing those now in the West Midlands. We're using £500,000 in terms of paying for work placements for young people, incentivising young people so that they feel that it's just not another training course, because there's got to be a piece here about something transformational and different to what's gone before. So those are some of the quick calls I would make on government in that kind of space, but ultimately comes back to giving us the levers at a regional perspective to make things happen faster, quicker, and bring the key partners together in a place-based perspective.
Well, hopefully the English devolution bill will sort of will open those avenues up and quicken the pace up. And also know you're doing something around sort of with regards to the apprenticeship levy with SMEs with our other strategic partner, the 5% Club, which is a great initiative as well. Thank you, David. Eleanor, can I come across to you? Same question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm definitely not a policy expert myself, but just to build on what David said, I think that the evidence that we've got shows that if you're going to bet on a horse, apprenticeships is a pretty good horse to bet on. Apprenticeships are really effective ways at engaging marginalised people into good employment. So we'd love to see the government really quickly develop the guidance around the apprenticeship and skills levy for employers. And as David said, taking a really participatory approach to make sure that whatever's decided really works for all sides of the system, employers being a part of that, but really important to start ring fencing who are those dwindling numbers of apprenticeships really reserved for, but also looking at the pre-employment support that groups such as care leavers and those with experience of the criminal justice system are just missing out on. So yeah, I think ring fencing is a really important part of that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. And as I say, it's great to also concentrate and focus on the real sort of marginalised groups and those at danger of missing out and the various cohorts within those. Thank you very much for your insights. And Lauren, can I come across to you, please? Finally?
Yeah, of course. And I suppose the tricky bit of your question, as always, is the kind of without funding, because the reality is, young people won't partake in any opportunities if they don't feel safe where they live or they don't feel ready or prepared, particularly from a mental health perspective. And all of that's going to take a little bit of money somewhere. We've been clear in our kind of structured ask through the Youth Employment Group for the Youth Opportunity Guarantee, which we're pleased to see this government take forward, and for the young person's entitlement. I suppose to answer the question without funding, I think it's kind of our ask is to be bold and think about the ways that we can really start now to fix the systems, but not to try and build it without the collective support, without the people in this room that are kind of living it and breathing it too. Yes, be bold and think differently, but that doesn't always need shiny new quangos around the table. It is actually all of us here that are working really hard with the voice, the input, and the support from young people to don't do it without them and without us.
That's a fabulous answer. Thank you very much. And it is all about, if I just put, that generic question, our answer probably would have been funding, hence why I sort of said but no, thank you very much. And it is all about collaboration. It is about working together, as I say. So thank you very much. It just leaves me to really thank the panel. It's been a real sort of fabulous panel session, really hearing from all the sort of sector leaders that we've had. We've had over 260 people registered for this. So again, it's a fabulous turnout as well. So just leaves me really to thank LJ, Lauren, Kira, who unfortunately would have been great to ask that question to as well, but she's had to leave us. David, thank you very much again for your input, and Martin. So thank you guys for joining us. This will be available, Martin, pretty much straight away after sort of editing. Is that correct?
We will look at sort of editing out the technical glitches as well. So it will be about social media and email very soon.
as soon as. So, and then what we'll do, we'll also put all the contact details in the chat and also on our social media posts. So thank you very much, David, Eleanor, LJ, Lauren, Kira, Martin.
Thank you very much. Have a good
Take care.
weekend all.
Thank you.